My girlfriend admitted she cheated. I needed a real man. She smirked. My friends took her side. I just smiled, took my keys, and left. This morning, my phone blew up with 32 missed calls. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, scattered like breadcrumbs through the last few months of our relationship. But when you've been with someone for 3 years, you tend to give them the benefit of the doubt. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. It started with minor changes. Allison began staying late at work more frequently, which wasn't unusual during busy times. Then there was the unfamiliar perfume, new clothes appearing in our closet, and her phone becoming a prized possession that was never more than an arm's length away. I'm not the jealous type. I never have been. Yet, something felt off. The way she'd pull away when I tried to hug her from behind while she was texting. How she'd step outside to take calls, insisting they were work-related. The endless girls' nights with names I didn't recognize. Last Tuesday, while folding laundry, her phone lit up on the coffee table. A message preview from someone named Jay popped up. "Miss you already. Last night was..." The rest was cut off, and my stomach dropped. I didn't want to be the guy who snoops through his girlfriend's phone, but the universe seemed to be urging me to wake up. When she got home that night, I decided to confront her directly. She was in the kitchen, making a smoothie, as if nothing was amiss. The sound of the blender filled our apartment as I leaned against the doorframe, watching her. "Who's Jay?" I asked when she finally turned off the blender. The change in her demeanor was instantaneous. Her shoulders tensed, but then she surprised me by smiling. Not her usual warm smile, but something cold and almost triumphant. "Wondering when you'd finally catch on, Michael," she said, sipping her smoothie. "Jay's my boss. And yes, I've been sleeping with him for the last 2 months." The casual way she said it hit me like a slap. No guilt, no shame, just pride. "I needed a real man," she continued, still smirking. "Someone who knows what he wants and goes for it. Not someone who spends his weekends playing video games with Jacob and watching dumb movies." I stood there, absorbing her words. 3 years together, and this was how she truly viewed me. Amid the shock, I felt a strange clarity rising. "Does Chloe know?" I asked, thinking of our mutual friend who had introduced us. "Oh, she's known for weeks," Allison laughed. "Most of our friends know. They understand. Jay can actually provide a future, not just dreams and excuses." That hit harder than the admission of infidelity. The people we had shared birthdays, holidays, and countless dinners with had all been observing this unfold, probably laughing behind my back. I pulled out my phone and opened my group chat with Jacob and Chloe. "Is this true? You all knew?" Jacob replied quickly, "Bro, you're great, but Allison deserves someone more established. Don't take it personally." Chloe added, "We didn't want to hurt you, but maybe this is the wake-up call you need." I looked up from my phone to find Allison watching me, that same smirk still lingering on her lips. She was waiting for the explosion. The drama unfolded like a scene she could share with everyone later. Poor, immature Michael losing his cool. Instead, I smiled. A real, genuine smile that caught her off guard. Without saying a word, I walked to our bedroom, grabbed my go bag that I always kept packed for weekend trips, along with my laptop and keys. When I passed through the kitchen again, Allison was staring, her smirk slightly fading. "Where are you going?" she demanded. "Out," I replied simply. "And Allison, keep the apartment. I'm sure Jay can help with the rent." I heard her start to respond as I closed the door behind me, but I didn't stop to listen. My phone was buzzing with messages, likely from our so-called friends trying to justify themselves. As I drove away, I turned my phone off and felt something unexpected. Relief. Sometimes losing everything reveals exactly what you never had in the first place. I had no idea where I was headed, but for the first time in months, it felt like I was going in the right direction. Update. First, thanks for all the support on my last post. I never expected it to blow up like that. A lot has happened in the past week, and honestly, I'm still processing everything. I've been staying at a small motel on the outskirts of town. It's not the most glamorous place, but it's clean. And the owner, an older guy named Pete, seems decent. He even knocked $20 off the weekly rate when he heard my story. After 2 days of silence, I turned my phone back on to find 32 missed calls and 47 text messages. Most were from Allison, some from Jacob and Chloe, and a few from numbers I didn't recognize. But what really caught my attention was the flood of notifications from social media. Allison had been busy, really busy. Her Instagram story painted a picture I recognized all too well. Apparently, I was a controlling, jealous boyfriend who monitored her every move. According to her posts, I emotionally manipulated her for years, isolating her from friends and throwing a violent tantrum when she finally stood up for herself. Each post had hundreds of sympathetic comments, including some from people I thought were my friends. The crown jewel was a tearful video where she claimed I had financially abused her by making her split all our bills 50-50 while I hoarded my money. A rich accusation considering she earned more than I did and insisted on that arrangement herself. Then came a text from Gemma, a coworker I've known for years. "Hey, you might want to check your email. Something's going around the office about you." Sure enough, there was a company-wide email about creating a safe workplace environment, with a thinly veiled reference to recent concerning behaviors from certain employees. No names were mentioned, but the timing was unmistakable. I should have been furious. Maybe I should have fought back and posted my side of the story. Instead, I just felt curious. How far would she take this? Pretty far, as it turns out. Yesterday, I stopped by our local coffee shop, the one place I thought would be safe since Allison hated their coffee. Wrong. The barista, who had always been friendly, looked at me as if I were something stuck to her shoe. Later, I found out that Allison had become a regular there, sharing her survival story with anyone who would listen. But here's where it gets interesting. While picking up some clothes from storage, I ran into Juliana, Allison's supposed best friend. She appeared nervous, glancing around as if afraid of being seen talking to me. "You need to be careful," she whispered. "Jay isn't just her boss. His wife is connected. Like, really connected. And Allison's been telling her you're unstable, dangerous even." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, sensing her anxiety. Juliana's eyes darted around again. "Because this isn't the first time. Before you, there was another guy at work. Allison and Jay did the same thing to him. He ended up leaving town. That conversation changed everything. I spent the night digging through legal records, social media, anything I could find. Turns out the previous guy existed. Mark something. He completely vanished from social media around the time Allison started at the company. This morning, I received a call from our landlord. Allison had tried to remove my name from the lease, claiming I'd abandoned the property. When that didn't work, she told him I'd been threatening her. He called to warn me, saying his sister had gone through something similar years ago. But here's the real kicker. While all this was unfolding, I received a message request on Instagram from an unfamiliar account. The profile picture showed an elegant woman in her 40s, adorned in expensive jewelry. The message was straightforward. "I believe we need to discuss my husband and your girlfriend. Coffee tomorrow?" It was signed Mrs. J. I'm meeting her soon. Something tells me that Allison's real man narrative is about to become much more complicated. Strangely enough, watching Allison weave this intricate web of deceit while our friends chose sides based solely on her claims feels liberating. Each spiteful post, every fake tear, and every twisted tale only confirms my realization. I'm not losing anything valuable. Update 2. Apologies for the delay. The past 2 weeks have been a whirlwind. That coffee meeting with Mrs. J was a game changer. She's been gathering evidence for months, not only about Allison and her husband, but also a pattern of behavior at the company. Remember that guy Juliana mentioned, who left town? He wasn't the only one. Mrs. J had documented at least 3 similar incidents over the last 5 years, where young employees got involved with her husband and then pushed out anyone who might expose the truth. The difference this time? Mrs. J was done being quiet. She had texts, emails, expense reports, and even security footage from the company parking garage. However, she needed one final piece: public exposure. That's where the annual company party came into play. I hadn't planned on attending. Why would I? But Mrs. J had other ideas. Sometimes, she said, the best revenge is allowing people to reveal their true colors. The party was at a fancy hotel downtown. I arrived late, dressed better than I ever had for such events. The looks I received upon entering were priceless. Allison nearly dropped her drink, and Jay's face went from red to white so quickly that I thought he might faint. But here's the beautiful part. I didn't have to do anything. Chloe approached first, clearly tipsy. "You've got some nerve showing up here," she slurred, loud enough for nearby groups to overhear. "After everything you put Allison through?" I simply smiled. Everything I put her through? That's interesting. Tell me more. That's when Gemma stepped in, my coworker. It turned out she had been quietly gathering her own evidence. Screenshots of Allison boasting about her conquest in the company chat groups and recordings of her planning how to manipulate the narrative with Jay. Actually, Gemma announced, I think we'd all like to hear the real story. The next hour felt like watching dominoes fall. Mrs. J timed her entrance perfectly, tablet in hand, as the projector accidentally displayed a slideshow of incriminating messages and photos. Allison's increasingly frantic attempts to control her narrative were evident. The real show came from Jacob, who had been filming everything on his phone, intending to share it with Jay later to prove his loyalty. Instead, he captured Allison's complete meltdown. "You think you're so clever," she screamed at me. "You and that bitter old woman trying to ruin everything I've built. Jay loves me. We're going to have a life together." That's when Mrs. J decided to share the cherry on top. Divorce papers, already filed. It turned out Jay had promised Allison the same future he had offered to those other employees. Same script, different actress. Throughout all of this, I barely spoke, simply watching as years of manipulation and lies unraveled in real time. Juliana, who had been quiet all evening, finally spoke up. "I helped her," she admitted, addressing the now silent room. "I helped her destroy that other guy's reputation. I can't do it again." By midnight, the party was effectively over. Allison had stormed out, mascara running down her face, while Jay was locked in his office with HR. Those friends who had been so quick to believe her stories couldn't meet my gaze. As I left, Mrs. J grabbed my arm. "Thank you," she said, "for being the one who didn't run." I drove back to my motel room feeling oddly at peace. Pete was still awake, watching late-night TV in the office. He glanced at my face and grinned. "Good night?" You could say that. This morning, my phone started buzzing again, but the tone was different this time. Apologies, explanations. People insisting they never truly believed Allison's claims. I even received a message from Mark, the guy who left town. Apparently, he's been keeping track of everything through mutual acquaintances. Sometimes karma doesn't require our involvement. It just needs an audience. Final update. This is it. The concluding chapter of this saga. And trust me, it's been quite a journey. You might want to grab some popcorn for this one. First off, the fallout from the company party hit harder than anticipated. Within 48 hours, both Jay and Allison were asked to resign. But that was only the beginning. Remember those documents Mrs. J had gathered? It turns out there was even more. Each falsified expense report Jay used to cover his business dinners with Allison, every email where they conspired against other employees, and every manipulated performance review. She presented it all to the board of directors. The company's legal team acted quickly, very quickly. They were less concerned about the affairs and more focused on the pattern of workplace harassment and financial misconduct. Both Jay and Allison are now facing civil lawsuits. But here's where it gets intriguing. Remember Mark, the guy who left town? He returned bringing receipts, both literal and figurative. It turned out he had documented everything before he left, including the smear campaign that Allison and Jay orchestrated against him. He just hadn't known what to do with it all, until now. Mrs. J connected him with her lawyer, and 3 days later, he filed his own lawsuit. Then something remarkable occurred. Other former employees began to come forward, each with their own stories and evidence. What started as one scandal rapidly turned into an avalanche. Allison attempted to get ahead of the situation. She posted a tearful video claiming she was the real victim, manipulated by Jay and now being persecuted. That's when Juliana finally found her courage. She shared the screenshots of their private chats, the ones where Allison boasted about her conquests and plotted how to ruin people's reputations, the ones where she ridiculed her victims. Last week, Allison showed up at my motel. Pete, the owner, called me at work. "That girl you told me about? She's causing a scene in the parking lot." I took my time driving back. I found her sitting on the hood of my car, mascara streaked, clutching a manila envelope. "I have dirt on everyone," she said, attempting to sound threatening, though her voice trembled. "If you don't help me stop this, I'll release it all." I just laughed. "Go ahead, burn every bridge you have left. Let's see how that works out." She tossed the envelope at me. Inside were photos, screenshots, and private messages. ammunition she'd gathered over years of manipulation. It was her insurance policy. I took pictures of every single page while she watched, then handed it back to her. Release whatever you want, but first, take a look at where your previous schemes have led you. The thing about people like Allison is that they can't stand when their weapons are turned against them. She ripped up the envelope right there in the parking lot, screaming about how we'd all regret this. That tantrum? Someone recorded it, and it was all over social media within hours. The final blow came yesterday. Mrs. J's divorce was finalized, and guess what? She got everything. The house, the cars, most of their assets. Jay's golden parachute from the company, gone to pay legal fees, his reputation, destroyed, his future career prospects. Let's just say Google isn't his friend anymore. As for Allison, last I heard, she was moving back in with her parents in another state. Her social media accounts have gone dark. Those friends who sided with her, they're facing their own fallout. Turns out, backing the wrong horse has consequences. Jacob tried to apologize yesterday, sending me a long message about how he should have been a better friend. I simply replied with a screenshot of his old messages supporting Allison. He blocked me. Coward. Chloe is also doing damage control, worried that those screenshots Allison kept might impact her own career. I almost feel bad. Almost. As for me, I just signed a lease on a new apartment and got a promotion at work. It's funny how removing toxic people can improve everything. And yes, I'm seeing someone new, taking it slow, doing it right. The best revenge isn't about plotting or scheming, it's about living well and letting others destroy themselves. But I won't lie, it's been pretty satisfying watching it all burn. This will be my last update. Thanks for coming along for the ride, Reddit. Remember, karma doesn't need your help. Sometimes you just need to step back and let people show their true colors.